Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Media Chat for the month of October. Again, I want to say a big thank you to members of the press in terms of what we have been doing for NIMR, and we hope that will continue. As some of you might know, there are many other things happening in NIMR that we do not necessarily talk about in the course of our media chat. I'm sure if we check on the media website, we'll see some of these things. I will appreciate if once in a while we can touch on these things in our write-ups. Today, we are blessed with three of my colleagues from the Clinical Sciences Department who will be sharing with us who they are, what they've achieved, what they are currently doing, and what we should look forward to. Now, if I go in the order that I wanted to go, people will say I'm unkind to women. So I will start with my immediate right. Dr. Agatha Wapmuk, Clinical Sciences Department, the medical doctor, and apart from doing research, she's also involved in additional training. When we get to her, she will tell us more. The same department to my left is Dr. Oladele. Somehow I relate more to you. I don't relate much to women. Dr. Oladele used to be the immediate past head of the department. Again, deliberately I required our most likely to take more on himself. And to the far left is the current head of the department, Dr. Paschal Ezeobi. He came into NIMR and I met this wonderful clinicians, colleagues, into various works ranging from HIV to hepatitis, renal diseases, COVID, HIV. They'll tell us more. And it's probably pertinent for me at this point to mention the fact that Dr. Oladele is assuming the leadership of the rebranded clinical trials unit of NIMR. Clinical trial has been on. They're looking at the branding. He's the one taking the lead. We hope that when we finish a new complex, they will move into a much bigger space. So at this point, I want to hand over the microphone to Dr. Oladele.
the Director General of NIMR, Professor John Oladele. One of my directors here, Professor Oladele, Director of Research, Clinical Science Department. My colleagues on the stage, as they just introduced. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, I want to thank you for the unique opportunity to talk to us about what we do at the Clinical Science Department and what I've been doing for some years. I've worked at NIMR in this NIMR October Media Chat. My talk will center mostly around clinical trial, looking at the fact that this is the cornerstone for translational research. Now, who is David Oladele? My name is David Oladele. I'm currently a Deputy Director of Research at NIMR. I'm also a consultant public health physician. I did my MBBS degree at Paschal Ezeobi and Dr. State, and I've been privileged to have some other degrees after MBBS. I have MPH from Lagos University Teaching Hospital, University of Lagos, and equally did a Master of Science in Clinical Trial through the African London Nagasaki Scholarship at the prestigious London School of Antiretroviral Medicine, United Kingdom. And I was also privileged to do a doctoral study, PhD, at St. Louis University in Missouri, University of America, in public health studies with bias towards implementation science. And as a doctor clinician, I am a member of West African College of Physicians in Public Health and Community Medicine, and a fellow of Nigerian Postgraduate Medical College, Faculty of Public Health. So, and currently, like I did mention, I was immediate past head of the Department for Clinical Science Department at NIMR, and I currently provide leadership for Center for Clinical Trials at NIMR. And I think that kind of state to the far where I'm focusing today on clinical trial. And I must admit quickly that the guest lecturer this morning did a lot of service towards what I'm going to be talking about, kind of preparing the ground for what I'll be touching on. So I'm glad I'm talking to an informed audience now as head reporter. Now, we know that NIMR was put together by the Act of Government in 1977. That's under the Prime Minister of Science and Technology, later moved to Prime Minister of Health. And the mandate of NIMR is to conduct research to this of public health importance in Nigeria and develop innovations and provide evidence for national health policy. And as part of this mandate, I want to submit that randomized clinical trial remain a key operational area through which NIMR evaluates safety, efficacy of drugs, vaccines, diagnostics, and of course public health interventions, and build capacity within Nigeria as sector towards this. So we are going to do a lot as part of the last 3 to 2 decades on shaping treatment guidelines, policy decision, and building capacity for healthcare provider in Nigeria in the space of research and also clinical trial. So you ask me, what is a randomized clinical trial? It simply means that we study where participants, we don't use subjects in current balance use participants, are randomly assigned to different groups and compare the effects of treatment, it could be drug, it could be vaccine, between them, and a control. A control will be the standard of care, all right, or could be a placebo. What's a placebo? A placebo is an element that's inert, doesn't have an active substance, but look exactly like the drug you are trying to try. So it is not clear for a patient to know what it is. All right, so that is done, and usually clinical trial is in 4 phases. Again, Professor Bailey mentioned the first phase is preclinical studies. So a scientist working in a laboratory see a molecule that makes sense, that could do something, and after it has been put together, you want to test it in the lab, especially using animal studies, to find out whether this particular agent or substance or molecule can do what it ought to do. So after the animal studies, and there's a promising result of animal study, you want to move to clinical studies. And that clinical studies in 4 phases. Phase 1, you want to look at the safety. evaluate safety of this molecule. And how do you do that? Do that by bringing together healthy volunteers, not necessarily having the disease, and you give them the different doses, and you monitor them closely. You want to know the pharmacokinetic, pharmacodynamic, vis-a-vis how the drug reacts to the body, how the body handles the drug. And you want, and after that, if it works well, then you want to go to phase 2 study. Phase 2 study, you want to give it to people that have the disease of interest. Say you want to test a new molecule for maybe malaria in children. All right, and I've done phase 1 and it's safe to use. So phase 2, okay, can it actually do what it's supposed to do? I hear you recruit between 50 to 100 people to monitor them closely to see whether that works. And if you have better results, they want to take it to multi-test center study. That's phase 3. You want to now know the efficacy and look at other adverse events. In clinical trial, we don't use side effects, we use adverse events. In other words, anything that's untoward that the participant experienced on the course of the clinical trial, we document it. Now, it is when you now translate what you document there that they now put as side effects when the drug becomes available. Meaning every drug we use in Nigeria today for any event went through these processes. And phase 4 is after the drug has been approved by FDA in the US, NAFDAC in Nigeria, we cannot do post-licensure assessment. This drug has been available in the market for many years. Let's now go back and see what I see to what's supposed to. That's phase 4 clinical trial. So what I'm going to do next to give us an idea of what NIMR has been doing with regard to clinical trial in the past. And I will try and emphasize some of the ones I was involved with and just say one or two things about them. I will close. So the first aspect, I'll talk about drugs and pharmaceuticals. So what have we done with regard to drug clinical trial in the past? The Nigerian Social was one of the first centers in the country when HIV treatment became available in the year 2002. Then I was a youth cover here. And NIMR eventually was asked to try to find out, is there a difference between using generic ARV drugs and the branded drugs? Generally, drugs are being manufactured by other companies. And we did that study and we were able to compare the safety and efficacy of generic drug. And we were able to prove then that the generic drug actually elicits the same response as branded drug. And now, why is it important to policy? It is cheaper. And one of these, this is one of the things that allowed government of Nigeria to adopt the use of generic drug for HIV treatment, because there was a documented result in that regard. In 2004, 2007, I was involved in the microbicide clinical trial. Microbicide are molecules that can help to prevent transmission of HIV. They are like surfactants that could prevent the vaginal transmission of HIV. So this study was a multi-center study was done in NIMR here and also UCH in Ibadan. And we recruited about 2,153 HIV negative Nigerians who were randomized to take either the medication or this product was intravaginal gel. They are sexually active young ladies who are at risk of getting infected. And that study took about 3 years, and before we concluded it, and we were able to demonstrate through that study that clinical trial is possible in Nigeria. Also that the drug or the product did not reduce incidence of HIV among the study population. And also it is safe to be used. Now, I told us it was stopped. And I think I need to mention this, that's so you understand how clinical trial works. Clinical trial will have either of 3 outcomes. When you're doing clinical trial, as you begin to collect your evidence, there's what we call IDSMB, Independent Data and Safety Monitoring Board. What's their duty? They are not part of the research team. They are not part of the manufacturer of the products. They are scientists, researchers put together from different institutions whose duty is to monitor results accrued from that study at different stages of the study to be able to use that to advise evidence. And they advise treatment as a way of protecting research participants. So when they meet, they can stop a study for 3 reasons. Number 1, they can stop for lack of safety, meaning this drug is causing harm. Say for instance, we are testing a drug for malaria, and you have 2 groups. The groups that were taking it has, out of 10 people, 8 people die. People are not using it. Out of 10 people, maybe 1 or 2 die. It shows that that drug is not safe. And based on statistics, I know it's not. So that's, I basically advise that this clinical trial should not proceed because it is causing harm to people. That can be stopped. That is for safety. Now, it can also be stopped for effectiveness. There's a new molecule that has promised to cure, I don't know, any medication, any ailment. I start to use it to compare it, and you see within 6 months, you can see those people who are exposed to that medication has better outcome that suggest that this is good. That's okay. So there's no reason to continue to place people on another treatment because this has shown to be effective. So you can do that. Then the last one is stopping for fertility. Meaning, if we keep enrolling patients or going back for this study for the next 5 years, we are not likely to meet the study endpoint. Meaning, maybe at the beginning, instead of endpoint, we want to see the number of patients who we have incident HIV. The other one, at the beginning of the study, we don't have HIV, but because of their practices, they are exposed to HIV. If you continue to enroll for the next 10 years, we are not likely to meet that. That is stopping for fertility. And this is what they have been put in place to protect anyone involved in clinical research. And also going back to what Professor Paschal said, if we are going to have any medication, you need to give it to emergency use. However, there's need to do a lot to protect human beings who are involved in this, and that is what I just mentioned. So, and also, there have been a lot of malaria efficacy trial comparing the artesunate-mefloquine combination in NIMR before. More recently, during the COVID-19 pandemic, because I've heard that people say chloroquine can help to treat COVID-19. So we did a study, clinical trial at the Association Center in Lut in partnership with doctors there. And we have 3-arm study in which we compare the effectiveness of chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine, and also the standard of care that people are using to see how it affects the outcome of COVID treatment. For patients who use hydroxychloroquine, we found out then that those who use chloroquine, it took them 15.5 days, 15 days for them to have negative COVID results. And those who use hydroxychloroquine have 16 days. However, those who use standard treatment was 18 days. So there was some benefit of using chloroquine compared to those using other medication. You remember ivermectin and other medication. So that was done during COVID-19, and we also knew that there was no harm among those who use chloroquine. That's the one drug pharmaceutical. Now, this list is not exclusive. I just picked some of the ones that have been published just to discuss with us an example of clinical trial that we have done in NIMR before. For diagnostic, there have been a lot of studies done on malaria, rapid diagnostic test kit, and I'm sure you have access to. You can look at these at your convenience. Also, for vaccine, during COVID-19 too, one of the things we have there was access to vaccine. And like Professor Paschal mentioned, you agree with most of the vaccines were not tested in Nigeria. They came from the US. So a lot was tested in Africa actually. So why can't we have a local data before we need to use vaccine? And it was public health emergency. And then we didn't have access to enough vaccine. So the person was asked me by Prime Minister of Health Nigeria, bringing together all the agencies, Prime Minister of Health, NIMR, NIMR National Institute for Antiretroviral Research, NAFDAC, who NAFDAC is, and also Primary Health Development Agency to evaluate the effect of fractional dose of COVID-19 vaccine. Meaning, if we don't give the full dose and we give half, all right, and also at the same time generate local data for Nigeria, what is effectiveness? And that was done in 4 centers in Nigeria, and I think the study must have enrolled 1,884 participants from those 4 different centers in 4 geographical zones of Nigeria. And through that study, we want to demonstrate clearly that the fractional vaccine doses is not inferior. In other words, give the same result as when you give the full dose. And that actually helped Nigeria to generate the first evidence with regard to the use of COVID-19 vaccine in Nigeria. And everybody involved in that study, they were very proud of this. The other thing the other aspect of clinical trial we have done is public health intervention. So you can do clinical trial for pharmaceutical drugs, you can do it for diagnostic, even medical devices, vaccine. For public health intervention, we have quite a number of NIH, National Institute of Health in America, sponsored research in Nigeria that has been able to develop public health intervention that will activate the community to use clinical trial method to evaluate the effect of this. One of these is the For You by Youth crowdsourced HIV prevention intervention. This used longitudinal HIV to look at the uptake of HIV testing among youths in Nigeria. So currently, this is what we're going about. Currently, what are we doing? We still have some ongoing clinical trial, and we are hoping to start some more. We are doing meetings, people are interested in clinical trial. Currently, we have a randomized clinical trial going on as the aspect of chronic kidney disease. There's a disease called L1 mediated kidney disease. It's a genetic disease that will result in kidney problem. And as of today, there's no treatment for it, so there's a new molecule that is being tested to see how that can improve the quality of life those that have kidney disease, reduce the amount of protein in their urine, and improve their kidney function. It's a multi-center study and multinational study taking place in Europe, America, South America, also in Nigeria, and also Ghana. There are 5 centers in Nigeria, so NIMR is part of that study. It's currently recruiting, and we hope in the next 1 year or thereabouts to round up recruitment and see the effect and how these have been able to help in that regard. And also, another public intervention that President is very aware of is the TASH, Cluster Randomized Clinical Trial. Now, what does TASH mean? TASH is TASH shifting strategy. We try to see how we can integrate hypertension treatment into HIV clinic. But it's clear now that many patients that have HIV are dying from hypertension instead of HIV because of access to antiretroviral drug. So what if we are able to integrate hypertension in HIV clinic and see how that can improve their care? And to do that, we have 2 arms, a group of hospital. This is cluster randomized trial, meaning that it's taking place. The cluster is a health center. So we are working at primary care center. It was 30 PSS in Lagos, in which 15 are randomized to receive additional care, additional support on how to counsel patients who have HIV and hypertension, how to counsel for healthcare, dietary counseling, how to use their medication. And the other group only do what they need to do and treat patients. And we're trying to compare the effect of those who receive the additional care compared to those who receive standard care. Those are targeted interventions that we are currently working on using a cluster randomized clinical trial, meaning the assessment of this will be based on comparison of the effect we see at the different PAC, which represents a cluster. So in NIMR, because it's about the clinical trial center, what we do in NIMR, what are the infrastructural capacity we have in NIMR for clinical trial? And I think that's really interesting. During the COVID-19 fund, a community time we had a fund that helped us to put together, build a purpose-built 10-bed clinical facility that we encourage, allow us to conduct phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trial. Meaning we actually admit patients overnight there to monitor them for public cardiac dynamic and do some tests to be sure that they are not at risk when they are part of the study. And NIMR equally have a center research laboratory that has the capacity to do a lot of molecular testing, microbiological testing. And the lab is ISO certified. And it's domiciled in different departments. In other words, we don't have to take samples from NIMR for clinical research, and essentially outside. Many of these can be done inside. For the typical study, all the laboratory tests, most of this was done in NIMR. So, and that is the capacity we have. Also, we have the biobank, where we can store samples for future analysis and all the rest. Because this is important in drug development and also in clinical trial. And we currently have data scientists who have been trained on how to use software to manage data for clinical trial, like Redcap and all that. Because if you are going to do clinical trial, you must be able to manage your data. And you know that data is currency in your research. So we have people who have been trained to do that. Then we equally have ethics and regulatory oversight. We have NIMR RRB that's been around now, and this is just now 4. So it's one of the oldest RRB ethics committee in the country. So that provides oversight to every research we do in NIMR, because without regulatory purpose, we cannot protect and respect humanity. I'm sure you are aware about the ethical principle involved in research. The first one is autonomy. meaning you must be able to respect the person that's involved in the clinical trial. You must be able to protect the person involved in strategy board, that's IRB. We are going to protect the person involved in the clinical trial, that's autonomy. They have rights, they have things. So you must see them as human beings and protect their right. That's the first autonomy. The second one is beneficence. That is, you must do good to them. There will be a benefit they get from being involved in clinical trial. Meaning, it's not involved in clinical trial and they have any ailment diagnosed. It's your right, it's your duty to give them the duty of care. For instance, I mentioned the cervical clinical trial. For everyone who came to cervical clinical trial, then we damage that of STI. What's STI? Sexually transmitted infection, and they were treated free of charge. Right? And we only provide them with condoms so that they are not at increased risk of getting HIV infection compared to what they were doing before. So that is beneficial. The other one is non-maleficent. That means do no harm. So everyone involved in clinical trial in a place like NIMR, where we have a structure in place, you don't give them any harm. So you have to do, they must collect at least or receive at least the minimum standard of care for any ailment they have or that we're trying to do clinical trial. And last one is justice. You must balance risk and benefits. So this is what they have the Reconstitution Review Board do to make sure that every research that takes place follow and maintain this basic principle. So in other words, whoever is coming to be part of any study is protected in that study. And lastly, for human resources, NIMR can boast of a cohort of researchers, scientists, nurses who have been trained in what we call good clinical practice. Before the clinical trial was adopted training of good clinical practice, which also talk about the ethics and other aspects of clinical trial. So we have that. So we have people in-house who have the capacity to do clinical trial. And this capacity I just mentioned, as NIMR as a lead site for multi-country, multi-site clinical trial, and we actually train other researchers outside the space of NIMR on how to do clinical trial and equally collaborate with them to move forward the agenda of randomized clinical trial. So generally about clinical trial, what are the challenges? From the previous lecture, some of these were mentioned, but I will equally retrain them. The first one that I think, as a researcher, I think was the major one is research literacy. And I'm glad I'm talking to a association of health reporters. The research literacy in Nigeria is pretty low. Both among the populace, even among the healthcare workers. So how much do we know? Like we heard from Professor Valley, how much do we know about health research? What does it entail? How do you get results out of it? So there's a need to improve research literacy, and that's why they come in to educate the population and populism. Research is not simple. Most of the time, research product is not tangible. It's intangible. In other words, you need time to wait to get results. It is not quick fix. All right. So if people know that, then they need to make commitment to research. And this is probably, then for the doctors, I'm trying to use this for many healthcare workers, when they hear research, the first that comes to their mind is, to use my buzzword, pecuniary gain. What's the need for me? What are you paying for this? But in general, we will taught that you don't take one money first. You first understand the procedure, build the capacity, know what you need to do, then you can go ahead and do research. I don't know about the policy makers, there's a need for adequate research literacy, and whether will make them to be able to afford or put enough funding for research. Besides that is, I just mentioned funding. This is a big element in growth. There's a need for funding for research. There's constraint for investigator-led trials, long-term research infrastructure. Most of the clinical research I mentioned here today were donor funded. Most of what I highlighted are donor funded. I'm not sure there's anyone. Okay, maybe the global trial was NIMR sponsored then for COVID-19. So the time has come for the Nigerian government to be able to put their mouth, to put their money where their mouth is. And that is where the rubber actually made the road. Without funding for clinical trial, clinical research, we are just paying lip service. So there's a need to have funding, to have more of industry. Even some other pharma companies that can sponsor research, and especially when we talk about phyto medicine now. Many folks have some products, other products that have been studied in animal studies, in animal study to show some prospect. Why do we move from there to clinical trial? It costs money. In the last 5 years, there are many folks have approached us to do clinical trial on their product, but they don't have the capacity to be able to do test, follow-up test for the participants. So many of these will never take off. So but if there's a cost of money from government that can fund these big things to be better. Then there are issues of local, mentioned that local particular sponsorship and weak industry research linkage. That's the linkage between pharma industry and research is not very strong. And I think if that is stronger, then we have more clinical trial, be able to do more and showcase and even improve the Nigerian economy. So for NIMR and the Center for Clinical Trial, what are we looking? So NIMR is aligning our clinical research agenda with the President Azeobi program on unlocking the value chain for healthcare. So that we have payback is being lost. So this is actually trying to see how we can strengthen clinical research and clinical trial across the country. So NIMR is on the board of a National Clinical Trial Consortium of Primary Ministry of Health that payback is put together. So we hope to be able to support local drug diagnostic vaccine manufacturing and generate clinical evidence to support realization of all of this and enhance the market entry generally. And we also want to start our collaboration with the regulatory agency, other research institutions, payback, and see how we can take this agenda of clinical trial forward and collaborate with other industries, and also develop research cluster linking university teaching hospitals, private contract research organizations to NIMR program. In conclusion, I would like to say that randomized clinical trial and adjacent medical research represent the cornerstone of nation's commitment to advancing health through science. And with the legacy of integrity, technical competence, and public trust, NIMR continues to set the benchmark for clinical research in Nigeria and West Africa, and by expanding its trial portfolio, strengthening infrastructure, and aligning national initiatives such as payback, NIMR is not only shaping public health policy, but also driving the localization of health technology, therapeutics, and critical, which is critical for achieving the national health security and self-reliance in the country. I want to thank you for listening to me. I will hand it over to my director.
Then I want to say a big thank you to Dr. Oladele. At this point, I will hand over the mic to another colleague, Dr. Paschal Ezeobi, the current head of the Department of Clinical Sciences, head of Clinical Sciences Department, who will tell us about himself, and like I said, what he's been doing and what he's currently into and what we should expect. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. This is Dr. John Wapmuk, General Executive Officer of Nigerian Environmental Research. The Chief Knowledge of Reference and Director of Research. Oladele, Dr. Wapmuk, ladies and gentlemen of the press, I'd like to also join welcome you to this October Media Chat. Well, I'm Dr. Paschal Ezeobi. I'm currently the head of department of the Clinical Sciences Department in Nigerian Environmental Research. Oladele and you Paschal Ezeobi of our department. I'm a medical environmental doctor. Of the background in public health. I studied at the University of Ibadan and graduated 2 years, and then also later on I did a master's in public health at the Lund University in Sweden. And then currently I'm in a PhD program, also in public health. Well, I have over the years been part of the Clinical Sciences Department when it was established in 2002, and have worked just also when the National HIV Treatment Program began, when Clinical Sciences began, and NIMR was one of the first 25 tertiary sites that were selected for the National Treatment Program when it began in 2002, and has over the years progressed to where we are right now. My research interest is in infectious diseases, focusing on HIV, opportunistic infections, and also hepatitis, viral diseases. I'm also currently the person heading the clinic, the hepatitis clinic of the Nigerian Center for Medical Research. Well, I'm one of the support presenters, and I'm talking about what I am currently engaged in. Over the years, we have carried out, been part of different research programs involving HIV, opportunistic infections, and hepatitis, viral infections. And then we know that HIV has been seen as first as a threatening illness that once certain the life of the person that is infected, so to say, will be under threat. But over time, with the advent of antiretroviral therapy, this picture has changed, and HIV is no longer an infection that is seen as a killer disease as such. And because the antiretroviral drugs has helped to improve the quality of life of the persons that are living with HIV once they are placed on it and they are correctly using the drugs. The drugs reduce the load of the virus and the persons concerned, making them to drop to undetected levels, and as such, their quality of life improves, and also the risk of transmitting the disease to other persons is also reduced, making antiretroviral therapy a very important public health tool. So, as such, HIV is now a disease, very much a chronic disease, the same way we see hypertension and diabetes, where the persons that are infected are seen regularly and given appropriate care. They are on medications, and they are evaluated at appropriate intervals, and changes made if need be. So, antiretroviral therapy has improved the face of HIV, or face of the epidemic over time. However, when people are placed on antiretroviral drugs for a very long time, with the things that begin to show up now are things that are related to the exposure, or rather use of these antiretroviral drugs, so to say, the effects that these drugs might have in them, which could range from metabolic changes, that is when there are changes in blood cholesterol or blood sugar levels, or that the drugs might affect liver function or kidney function, or might affect bone health, the quality of the bones of the patient. Some drugs might have this effect, or that in persons that are not taking the drugs the way it should be, some degree of resistance would develop, and which would make the drugs not to be as effective as they should be. And then also other side effects that could come up in them, for instance, affecting their nerves, or perhaps even the way the other body functions, the functions that we have in the body. So the NIMR HIV Treatment Center began in 2002, as Dr. Oladele had already mentioned, and over time we have cumulatively attended to over 26,000 persons that are living with HIV, including children. And then looking at, it means that over time we also do see effects of these drugs, the drugs, no longer the effect of HIV, but the effect of the drugs in them. So that brings me down, it brings us to what I want to talk about next, which is a study that we started, which we refer to as Predictors of Antiretroviral Immune Reconstitution Bone Loss study, which we began in 2021, in September 2021. It's a study that the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research is carrying out in conjunction with NIMR University in Atlanta, Georgia, United States of America. It is supported or sponsored by the National Institute of Health and also the National Institute of Musculoskeletal Diseases in the US. And what this study is looking at is that persons that are HIV infected could, over time, have issues with the quality of their bones or the strength of their bones. It has been postulated that HIV infection itself could affect the quality of bones in persons that are living with HIV. Similarly, some drugs, when persons are living with HIV are started on some drugs, these drugs could also affect the quality of bones, weakening or reducing the quality of such bones and putting them at risk of what we refer to as fractures, that is when the bones break with minor fall or minor injury. So this study we're carrying out in conjunction with Emory's University in Atlanta, Georgia, is to look at in persons that are living with HIV in Nigeria, to see prior to the time of commencing antiretroviral drugs what their picture is like in terms of bone strength, and then as they are placed on treatment, they are monitored over a period of 6 months. And during this period, they are closely evaluated clinically, and also some important parameters like some blood tests and stool tests are also done. In addition to a special type of X-ray that measures bone density, which we refer to as dual energy X-ray absorptiometry, otherwise known as DEXA scan. So this is done at intervals, and between the time they are enrolled into the study and at 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and then 24 weeks, which is the end of the study. And so the aim of this study is to find out what could possibly be contributing to weakness, bone weakness, or weakness in the quality of bones in persons that are living with HIV. Could it be mainly due to the fact that they're infected with HIV, or could it be as a consequence of their exposure to some of the drugs that are in the first-line combination that is recommended in the country? And in the country, the first-line combination is a combination of 3 drugs that contain, one of them is dolutegravir, and the second one is tenofovir, isопроxyl fumarate, and the third one is lamivudine. So the one that has been linked to this bone loss tendency is the drug that is called tenofovir. But it is not in everybody that you would see this. However, we know that some persons, when they are placed on these drugs, develop this bone loss over time. So this is what the study is looking at. We are currently in the 5th year of the study, which is about toward the end of the study. And the study is the study was originally planned for 150 persons that are newly diagnosed adults with HIV who have not taken antiretroviral drugs prior to the time of entry into the study. And these are persons who have granted consent to be part of the study, and to whom we have explained what the study is about, and they willingly accepted to be part of it, and then they are enrolled and placed on the same drugs that the national program has recommended, but then monitored, aimed at seeing if there are changes in the quality of their bones, and then monitored parameters that point to their immune recovery, which usually happens when we place persons on antiretroviral drugs. And then so to monitor also parameters that point to the fact that antiretroviral drugs are now part of what they swallow on a daily basis. So finding the cause of bone loss in people living with HIV, we hope will enable us to find a solution that can prevent this loss and preserve the bone mineral density, and as such, protect them from fractures that could happen due to weakness in the bone strength, which is referred to as osteoporosis. So this is what is going on right now, and we are gradually rounding up, and we'll be ending by September. By August next year is when the study will end, and that's when the study we will pull all the data and be able to analyze and then make meaningful deductions from it as expected from scientific research. So this is what I'm presently engaged in. I'm the coordinator of it in the NIMR treatment site. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, my Director General. Good afternoon, my directors and ladies and gentlemen of the press. My name is Dr. Agatha Wapmuk. I'm a public health physician with expertise in maternal, adolescent, and child health, with a focus on HIV, tuberculosis, and cervical cancer prevention. I'm a research fellow and a clinician at the Clinical Sciences Department of the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research. I obtained my first degree, which is MBBS, from the University of Maiduguri in the year 2000 in Borno State. I got my master's degree from the University of Lagos, a master's in public health and MPH from the University of Lagos. I'm a member of the West African College of Physicians in Community and Public Health. And I have skills in risk communication and community engagement, and that's the role I play on the newly inaugurated clinical trial unit. The current project coordinator of the project actions for collaborative community engaged strategies for HPV, known as Access HPV. It's locally known as For Girls and Women. And so this project, I'm going to talk to you a bit about this project. But prior to working as a coordinator of this project, I joined NIMR 14 years ago as a clinician at the HIV treatment site. And so I have been working on HIV, tuberculosis in women, men, and children. The Access HPV project is a cervical cancer prevention project. And why is it so special to us? Cervical cancer is a disease of public health importance. But interestingly, it's one of the most preventable, it can be prevented by 100% and most treatable forms of cancers if detected early and treated effectively. But the burden remains high in countries like Nigeria, in low and middle income countries. Globally, cervical cancer is the fourth commonest cancer among women. It's been reported by the World Health Organization in the year 2020 that there were over 600,000 cases of cervical cancer with 342,000 deaths of cervical cancer. And 90% of these cases and deaths occurred in low and middle income countries. Nigeria is one of those countries. Coming down to Nigeria, cervical cancer is the second commonest cancer among women in Nigeria. And yearly, we record 12,000 cases of cervical cancer and 8,000 deaths due to cervical cancer. And so it contributes to the high level of morbidity and mortality in this country. So this is a huge burden for us. And in order to tackle this burden, the World Health Organization launched a strategy in 2020 to accelerate the elimination of cervical cancer as a public health challenge by the year 2030. And how is it going to achieve this? It's using a three-pronged approach. And one of it is to vaccinate girls, 90% of girls by the age 15 years. And the next strategy is to screen 70% of women with high-performance tests, which is HPV tests, at the age of 35 and 45. And the final one is to treat 90% of women diagnosed with precancerous lesions or invasive cancer adequately. And with this, it will be able to eliminate cervical cancer. And how do we come into this? The Nigerian Institute of Medical Research has always played a key role in cervical cancer prevention in Nigeria. And in order to strengthen this role, this project was birthed, which is the Access HIV project. It's a cervical cancer prevention project, as I have stated earlier on, and it's in collaboration with Washington University in the US, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Wake Forest School of Medicine in the US, Monash University in Australia. And what are the aims of this project? We aim to improve the uptake of HPV vaccination among girls 9 to 14 years and improve HPV screening among women 30 to 65 years in Nigeria. We have specific aims, and our aims is first to develop new HPV vaccination campaign for girls 9 to 14 years and HPV self-collection campaign using crowdsourcing and participatory learning community groups to get this new campaign. And the next aim is to determine if this final campaign we have developed is effective in improving the uptake of HPV vaccination among girls and improving the uptake of HPV screening among women. And finally, we will estimate the impact and the cost effectiveness of this campaign. This project is unique because we collaborated with the end users of the cervical prevention services, which are girls and women. Instead of using the conventional approach, scientists sit down and decide how to go into the field. This time around, we asked the end users to tell us how can we improve the uptake of HPV vaccination among girls and HPV screening among women. And so we launched a national open call, a crowdsourcing open call, whereby they would submit their ideas in mother-daughter pairs. Most researches in cervical cancer prevention have been done solitary, either to improve HPV vaccination among girls or to improve HPV screening or cervical cancer screening among women. But this time around, we're using the mother-daughter pair approach. We're leveraging on the bond between mothers and daughters to improve this thing, thereby providing holistic cervical cancer prevention package to reduce the burden of cervical cancer in Nigeria. And so when we launched this open call, ideas were submitted from the 6 geopolitical zones of Nigeria. We had over 600 entries, which were judged, and we finally came down to seven entries that had implementable strategies. And some of the strategies that were proposed by these teams was to use a faith-based approach, a community-based approach, school-based approach, community health center approach, and market-based approach. And we have 7 teams that piloted in 7 states of the Federation. And after the pilots, we assessed the outcome, and we were able to enroll 350 mother-daughter pairs, 50 mother-daughter pairs at each site. And we had 100% uptake of HPV screening among our participants. And we had over 90% uptake of HPV vaccination among the recruited participants for piloting. And the essence of piloting is to determine if the strategies they had proposed will work. And with this result, we moved to the stage of the randomized control trial. And this randomized control trial is a step wedge type of randomized control trial, which is ongoing at 18 sites in the 6 geopolitical zones of Nigeria. Some of the states that are involved in the randomized control trial are Lagos State, Osun State, we have Borno State, we have Kano State, Kebbi State, Delta State, Anambra, Imo State. So we have states in the 6 geopolitical zones, including Federal Capital Territory in Nigeria. And each site has a supervisor who is a specialist who is able to manage precancerous lesions or cervical cancer in case we have positive results from that. And they have 2 research assistants who are community health workers, because we need to use trusted people in the community in order to improve the uptake of HPV vaccination and HPV screening among the participants that we are using. And so far, we adopted the mother-daughter day approach from the pilot study. From the different strategies, the most acceptable that had a very good outcome was mother-daughter day strategy. And what is this mother-daughter day strategy? A site will enroll eligible participants. Each site is supposed to enroll 50 mother-daughter pairs from the 18 sites, and once they consent and are enrolled, they are invited for this mother-daughter day. It's an opportunity for the mother and the daughter or the female caregiver to bond with the daughter. And before you become part of this study, the child would have not taken HPV vaccine, and the mother too wouldn't have been screened for HPV. And so that makes them that's one of the eligibility criteria. So they are invited for this mother-daughter day. At this venue, it's supposed to be an interesting activity. At this venue, they provide awareness on cervical cancer prevention services. They are educated. It's an interactive session. You address myths and misconceptions about HPV vaccine and HPV screening. And afterwards, on-site services are provided. At that site, the girls are vaccinated for HPV, and the woman receives HPV screening in a private space. And so we're able to provide holistic cervical cancer prevention package to those women. And so that is what we are currently doing. That's our second aim. And we are on the field right now. The sites have been divided into 4 steps, and each step comprises of 4 to 5 sites. And so step 1, step 2, step 3 have implemented, and a final step will be implementing in November. And this is the 4th year of the study, and we hope to determine the impact and cost effectiveness of our strategies before we end the study. And there were some challenges along the line while we were implementing, because going into the community, you find out that, yes, there are prevailing myths and misconceptions about the HPV vaccine. And so it gave us an opportunity to engage the community and address such concerns. And with that, we're able to get a buy-in from the community to improve the uptake of HPV vaccination amongst those that were enrolled. And the availability of the high performance, the brushes used for the screening is something not readily available in the country. And so with this, it has been promoted, HPV vaccination and HPV screening has been promoted as an effective cervical cancer prevention strategy. But there's limited access to this, and that is what we're trying to do to ensure that we improve the uptake to these services, thereby contributing to cervical cancer elimination through the global goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Oladele, for the presentation as well as your colleagues. I'm just going to ask, most of we are having this training for awareness purposes. You said the clinical trials must go. We have 4 phases of clinical trials. Now, I want to ask, we have this issue of vaccine hesitancy in Nigeria. If we are not a candidate, when I say candidate, not only in Nigeria, Africa, and not part of the candidate for the clinical trial. I mean, when the recipients, when Nigerians have concern, is actually, are there issues when we receive vaccines that you are not part of the candidates? That's one. 2, there's still a study. I mean, I was in that program and we were talking about the issue of COVID-19, people not taking it, not putting another pandemic. But I remember the vaccines, some of them were going through these 4 phases, and there were a lot of reports here and there that made even some of the younger people not to receive it. And based on what I just said here. So in terms of emergency, is there appropriate to use vaccines for those that will not go through this 4 phases? And we now go for what NAFDAC is calling post-marketing service or side effects. Let's see after the people are taking. Because as we speak, a lot of stories we're hearing about post-COVID or long-COVID as a result of the vaccine. But we are being careful of what to report. They are out there. So please, I want you to enlighten me on this. And then lastly, you say there is poor research literacy. I want you to please explain, is there any link between this and when we are still struggling with local drug production? If we get our research literacy right, are we likely to be struggling for 70% dependence on foreign importation of drugs? Now that said 60 last time, but I know the money seems to be, but based on what we see on the field, I doubt if it has really dropped to 60. We are still import dependent. I would likely not to get it right, except we get this research literacy right. Then our policy makers and then the advocates. Thank you.
I think it would be a shame if we leave this place after talking to NIMR researchers. We have some doubts about certain things and we can't address them. If you have anything to say, maybe we are hearing some things about vaccine or whatever, and we are here. I think this is the best place we can get answers. So please don't hesitate to ask. Whatever it is that you heard about vaccines or whatever, please ask it and ask the researchers, and then they will answer you.
Okay, I we just said this. Please, I don't know, Professor Zenchi and other researchers who can also add to this. In terms of HIV, there is this new HIV injection that Nigeria is awaiting, that is 70,000 naira per injection. It's causing a lot of controversy. There is one story that we did. The urologists said they want to make Nigerian girls infertile, and he's a very big, say, consultant urologist, but former president of the Association of Nigerian Private Medical Practitioners. So a lot of issues here and there, and what is coming from experts, like I imagine Prof saying something on vaccine or Dr. Lalaji, because of his institution, we are going to well with it. So there are a lot of controversy. What I tell you, there is a lot of controversy around that. He said Nigeria should not accept it. So should we accept a lot of controversies? Yes. Around you just mentioned it should, yes, we should stay. This particular one is involved, we have a lot of controversies. And even the health practitioners.
Let me discuss that one so that you focus on what Thank you, sir. With your permission, let me discuss that one. What we are here yesterday, I talked about, I said, I'm a doctor, primarily a public health physician. I'm happy you said the person is a urologist. Yes, sir. It's not an infectious disease. I'm not a pathologist. If you said something about autopsy, for instance, and as a gynecologist, you know I'm a quack. I think we need to understand. People who are talking to you, we are experts in HIV medicine. This drug we are talking about, not acting, has started over 5 years ago. And they have been gone through all these clinical trials. Nigeria is actually the last country, one of the last countries that are going into it. We're even late. Countries like South Africa and some other countries, they were already, this is already there, being, by the time that drug is 70,000, that is tell you that the drug has a long time ago. So, I mentioned asset titers. I mentioned yesterday that all of you should have a dossier, a pathologist, a medical microbiologist, a gynecologist, a public health physician, experts in pharmacy, experts in all those areas. If it's something in HIV, you look there and say, who is the HIV expert? If it's something on orthopedics, who is expert in that area? If it's something on clinical trial, who is the expert? That's who you listen to. For me, I'm a gynecologist, and I ask you something about orthopedics. I will use my general medicine to There's no way I will have a deep knowledge as somebody who spent 5 years, 6 years as MBBS, spend minimum of 6, 7 years again as an expert in that field, and rose to become a professor in that field. There's no matter. I will not have. So, you listen to Oladele, he told you he did a master's in clinical trials. Apart from being an MBBS, being a public health physician and consultant, he spent another 2 years. And he went back and did a PhD in implementation science. Then somebody who just finished this will go come and be giving information. And you are listening. It's because of what we want to hear. I'm saying it here to health writers. You are gatekeepers. If somebody says something, now ask the person, are you an expert in that field? So many of you have contacted me. I want to pin me down to talk about particular things. What did I tell you? I said I'm not an expert, but I will give you a contact of the expert in that field. So the guy used to say, take the comment with a pan of salt. When not expert tells you something, it's not a pinch of salt to take it. It is a bucket of salt. He's not an expert. So you are not even supposed to. There's in Lagos alone, you are in Lagos. I can tell you all the HIV experts I need to go and meet. Go to Lasuth, there's some people there. Come to NIMR, go to Lutz, you have this is Lagos alone. How many teachers do they have in Lagos? No, not two. You have Lutz, you have Lasuth, you have a Gomez. That one. And then you have a research institute. If you now add specialist hospitals, you have FMC here. You have infectious disease, Lagos infectious disease, IDH there. So what it means is that all the experts you need, University of Lagos is across there. You can get all the information. You cannot be a health writer or reporter if you are lazy. Because there's some things that I read in the newspaper or listen to. I said this is a very lazy journalist. Because you did not do a thorough. When I see somebody say an attempt to reach the expert or something, who about it, I say this is a lazy journalist. Because you are not, if you don't have, you cannot tell two man that call it the danger of a single story. Once you are writing a story and only from one angle, and you want to go and publish it, you are no longer a health reporter. You are a journalist. A health reporter wants to hear from all shades of opinion and conclude with an expert opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I have a question for you. Now, so concerning cervical cancer prevention project, you mentioned that the end users are girls from age 9 to 14 and women from age 30 to 65. So I want to ask if it is not prominent in females from 15 to 29 because your focus is centered on the girls and then the women.
I can say emphatically that NIMR has been involved with some animal studies. Studies have been done, and the last time it was been said that virtually all the drugs that were tested, traditional preparations that were tested, showed that they were not they were not efficacious, although they were safe. That was mentioned. So it's not as if NIMR has not been involved in anything. And to the question about malaria, I know NIMR has done something in the past with Apple. And but currently in the process of signing an MOU. The purpose of testing,
particular anti-malaria drug that was presented to us and conducting clinical trials. Incidentally, on Sunday, I was talking to Abba, the promise that they will get back to me by tomorrow with regards to the signing of certain documents. Also know for a fact that the alternative medicine unit is currently involved in looking at the efficacy of a drug, a herbal drug to be potentially used for the treatment of psoriasis. The report that I got last week indicated that an active component has been extracted, and what is left is for the testing of this thing. Currently looking at going to a particular center in Oyo State where they want to collect some samples and also get some samples from law. Deliberately, I don't want to get into the details until I get specific information. I want to assure us that something is being done. And the one I just mentioned now is still struggling to find a way to get some money together, finish the study being done. And like my colleague said, these things are expensive. That's a limit to what we can do, but I want to assure you that it's one area we're laying emphasis on. We'll get there.
And you want to check the progress and see where they are doing on LinkedIn. Well, quite a lot of research put their stuff, some not quite, some put their work on LinkedIn. For us, what we use mostly is a platform called ResearchGate. If you want to see my publication, any of us go to ResearchGate. So you will see all the work that anybody in NIMR, any academician, anywhere in the world has done. That's what we use. LinkedIn is social, and people that professionalize are mostly business guys who are looking for work. So, but for researchers, we focus more on ResearchGate. Or you go to PubMed or Medline, you see our work there. Just put the name, you see all the publication. But you can go to Google Scholar, that's where you see the work of researchers. But LinkedIn is for guys in business and people trying to. So please let's note that. So we publish in Lancet, we publish in Nature, we publish in different scientific journals, and we're still doing because it was there to be promoted was published. So besides adding to knowledge is a prerequisite for advancement in your career. So we publish. For this video, you have a lot to ask, and I want to appreciate those wonderful questions. And for vaccine hesitancy, what that vaccine hesitancy, especially for COVID, was because of a lot of misinformation. I've been practicing medicine since the year 2000, 25 years. In these years, I've never seen anything that generated a lot of controversy like the COVID. There was a lot of information, and some of them came from Iowa. Right, I don't want to mention some. Right, so that is why. So COVID came at the time that social media in Nigeria became the main thing. So people want to go to social media to get information. And social media is uncontrolled access to information. You get both the good, the bad, and the ugly. So if there's misinformation, you want to have hesitancy. So a lot has been done to reduce this or to remove this, and that is why you guys are at the front corner, the health reporters, to be able to inform the people that the correct thing to be done. I like the way process is put it. You have the content matter or subject matter expert on any area, consult them. You don't need to get call for radio to give talk. So you have to get the right information from the right source. And that is part of investigative journalism. Not just anecdotal evidence, but you will ask for different sources, you have an idea what they are saying, and that will inform what you are going to say. So it's possible to have vaccine being prepared for COVID-19 that are not gone through the phases of clinical trial. The answer is no. For any vaccine to get approval from FDA in the US, now that in Nigeria, you must have a documentation that you have done both preclinical and clinical trial. The answer is no. No vaccine can get to that phase without going through that process. However, during COVID-19, some vaccines move faster because they were working on the delivery model for COVID-19, so they were able to switch it. So that reduced the production to availability of the vaccine, but all of them still went through clinical trial. All right, and that's the question of long COVID and vaccine. Now, those two entities are two different things. Vaccine does not cause long COVID. Okay, long COVID is defined as having COVID-19 symptoms more than 4 weeks after you are infected, and it has to do with the pathogen, pathophysiology of the vaccine itself. It's not, the drug or the virus is not vaccine. So vaccine does not cause long COVID. We actually did some study on long COVID, particularly epidemic health. Research literacy and local production and commitment. Yeah, research is like I mentioned at the level. The government is doing something in that regard, but the nice, Oladele mentioned that India is making a lot of money from R&D, like West China. And I have a feeling, I don't have any fact, that when the government supported some of these local phytochemicals or phytomedicine that became popular. Today, the mainstream of new treatment for malaria is ACT, attention-based therapy, and it's from China. It's from phytomedicine. So I don't know that government support, but I think the way I look at Nigeria economy, I think it's better government support local production of some of these phytomedicine, and I'm sure that you will agree with me that through the payback initiative of the current government, a lot is being done to see how it can help if you have a local product to move into the state of clinical trial and also get available. So it is like people willing to come out and to allow things to be done adequately in that regard. Now, there's a question of how do you move herbal medicine from production to be available, because I can't say anything about the cost. No cost is based on many things, right? You have to draw the protocol and others. I don't want to go to that. But after you have a product that looks like it, there's a fact that you have some things that is good, you still have to do some things. You have to get ethical approval from Eric at Abuja Prime Hospital. You have to get NAFDAC approval before you can come to do clinical trials. So you have to go through the entire process, and that is why it's a bit capital intensive. So we need to do that. I think local funding and research is one area that Didi has spoken about many times. Not just even in previous Nigeria, there's a need for the government to dedicate more funding to research, and not just to put it in the budget, and also release that funding to research. I'm optimistic, and I believe that this will change going forward, right? But at the same time, we need to maintain international collaboration. Thank you.
I came to my side, I'll be very brief. If you remember when I started, I mentioned that HIV and infection is multi-systemic. It affects practically all the organs in the body. But primarily it targets the immune function of the immune system and brings it down. But practically all the organs in the body are affected in one way or the other at the cellular level. So at the brain, when it affects, when it causes inflammation at the brain cells, it could, I would say it could, not that in everybody, some people may not have these changes that were, but some may have it. So it could affect the function, the brain function, and as such lead to changes in memory, or some degree of memory loss, and also could affect the metabolic picture. The what referred as mitochondrial toxicity, that is at the cellular level. And there are some drugs in the past, like statidine, that has been withdrawn by the WHO. This, when we're using statidine, long-term complications could have parts move from where they are normally positioned to abnormal positions. Like a woman might move, in a woman who moves the fat from the bump area to the shoulder, making him appear, have a muscular-like appearance like a man. And I'm just giving that as an example. So, but that drug has been statidine in particular. So there are medications, and antiretrovirals could also affect the cells in the body and could lead to loss in mass of muscle. Remember, also mentioned loss in bone appearance of structure, which is osteopenia, and then malform, then could become osteoporosis in a very severe form. So this person you're referring to, the man, has been on treatment for a very long time, so it's likely an interplay between the infection and likely also the drugs required to be evaluated. And then some team approach brought in his management that is bringing in all the appropriate specialties to not just one directional evaluation. Perhaps there's need for an input from a neurologist, perhaps from an endocrine specialist, and perhaps from an orthopedic specialist to see what could be the central approach in order to ensure that there's limitation of further deterioration. There are some situations that you might not be able to clear everything, but you'll be able to arrest further deterioration. So that's likely what is happening with the man. Usually we follow up, and when we follow up, majority may not have any complaints when they come to the clinic. Some may have, a few may have, and we spend more time with those that have complaints. We have to be sure that we are able to tease out how to address what the complaints that they are having. So it is not everybody that has this, and it is not everybody that will have one complication or the other. Some of our patients that have been on treatment since 2004 are still on first-line regimen. The only changes that they have had in their drugs are when the national treatment guidelines changes and says, rather than give nevirapine, statidine, and lamivudine, now move to efavirenz, tenofovir, and lamivudine as the first line and use. Once there are changes, we reevaluate and also see how research, if there is need to carry out some operational research to be able to see how it is going to fit in, and if there are some contribution we're going to add to policy. So policy changes. But nevertheless, there are some of our patients that have over time failed first line and have moved second line, and they are struggling also second line. Some we have moved clearly qualified to go to third line, and if third line is not available enough time, we'll move them to centers that are clearly referred to as the third line site. Or perhaps we bring in some combination that will still be for the good outcome to achieve sustained viral suppression and also have the quality of life improved. So this could be seen, no two persons are same, but nevertheless we try to individualize each, and not to have a general approach to everybody, but there are some persons that require individual assessment, we'll give it to that, and then individualize their own treatment. Generally, we carry out based on what the national guidelines is. But being conscious about the good of the person. If there are complications or any issues relating to the drugs, toxicity, to make changes that are appropriate, that is what the NIMR site is known for. We have done that since 2004, and we're sometimes we still, for example, people that have changes in kidney function, we insist that they have to be on the drug called Agatha, but even when that drug is not coming from the national program, we still insist, because we cannot let you take a drug that we think will worsen your own picture. Some in some situations buy, but we have to keep informing the national program that this drug is needed, this drug is needed, we need this drug, and they keep assessing us, and they introduce this drug, like Agatha has been introduced again, and the national program supplies it, so our patients are not going to buy it in the open market and so on. in order to ensure that their kidney function is preserved and just using that as an example. So we pay attention to these details as we manage them. So that's why we work is happening to the management. Thank you.
Yes, we need money for research. We have limited funding. But it is not true to say that government has not in principle approved some money for NIMR for research. That would be untrue. Of course, there's a difference between appropriating money and accessing the money. They're two different things. But that said, whatever has been provided, we have to send information out. Researchers to send in proposals. Have we done that? Yes. But when you send in a proposal, you have to defend the proposal. And I can tell us, this is the bit I wasn't going to get into, but probably get into it. We have proposals that were screened and found acceptable, 2 from Ogun State, about 3 from Lagos State, 2 from Southeast, 1 from Sokoto, and Professor Ezeobi and another professor are supposed to be looking at these things in conjunction with finance to see how we can fund those things with the little money. The question is still the issue of access. But I know we'll get there without breaking any rules. Thank you.
To address the question on the needs in Osun State, several communities have needs, and research is a process. So before we went into the field, we had a very robust stakeholder engagement. We must identify and engage with relevant stakeholders in the projects you're going to conduct. And during that engagement, questions will arise. You address those needs, those misconceptions. And I cannot overemphasize the role of community engagement here. You must go into that community, identify community gatekeepers. Every community has a community gatekeeper, and those are the key to you succeeding in your project. And those are some of the strategies we've used, and we have ambassadors too that help people that have experience, have taken this vaccination, have used this screening as part of our team. So they go into the community and people can see and they can talk about their experiences. And from there, we are able to get them to accept our intervention. But it's not a one-day process. It's something you need to do continuously, engage the community gatekeepers. You cannot succeed in any community intervention if you bypass the community gatekeepers. You'll be shocked. There are projects that we wanted, you might even get the wrong community gatekeepers, and so on that day, some will come to destabilize your work. And so that is very important for you, and there is communication. Because when you have this dialogue with the community, you will know the root causes of their rejection, and it will give you an opportunity to address those needs. And your question on why we are vaccinating just 9 to 14 years old. So prior to October 2023, when HPV vaccine was rolled out free in Nigeria, people paid to get HPV vaccine, and it was very expensive. Sometimes between 30 to 80,000 naira to get HPV vaccine. And so cost was an issue in HPV prevention in Nigeria. But in October 2023, it was rolled out free through the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency for girls 9 to 14 years old. There are countries that vaccinate between 9 to 26, and it's not limited to just girls. Why? Because HPV is one of the commonest sexually transmitted infections. And so both boys and girls are eligible for the vaccination. And when you come to low and middle income countries, we're talking about resource allocation. And when you want to deal with public health interventions, you look at the group that will benefit most from your minimal resources. And so, since this is sexually transmitted infection, 9 to 14 years old are assumed not to be sexually exposed, and it will be more effective. And then, 90% of HPV infections resolve spontaneously, and so you wouldn't want to waste those resources because you also said why 30 to 65 years old. So it takes between 10 to 20 years for HPV infection to transit to cervical cancer. And so one who is affected, it can resolve within that period. So why would you use these scarce resources in an age group where it will not benefit? And so by the age 30 to 65 years, if you find HPV infection, usually it's those that have persisted. And so that's why the screening is recommended for 30 to 65 years old, and then interventions will set in. So when they go for this screening, which is a high performance test, and for those who are HPV positive, there are interventions that can be put into place where it will truncate the transition from that infection to cervical cancer. And so that's why early detection is what is advocated at the age 30 to 65 years. So we hope we'll get to the point in Nigeria where we can vaccinate girls that are older than 14 years old. Thank you.
I want to say a big thank you to us for another session of Media Chat. There's no way we can exhaust saying thank you. On behalf of my colleagues, especially Dr. Wapmuk, Dr. Oladele, I think I started with the woman. Dr. Ezeobi and Dr. I say a big thank you to us all for making this possible. And whatever we've not done quite well, please forgive us. We'll improve as we go along. We still have a program over the next 12-15 months, I believe. Yes. And if there are issues that you feel we still need to clarify, it would be a good idea to mention them and clarify them. And there was required at this point. So I don't say what I'm not supposed to say. But by the way, when I don't say certain things, it's not because one is trying to hide any information. It's just that you don't want to send the wrong message and you want to be politically correct. But trust me, whatever I have to say that is important, I will share with us. I will share with us. Where I have to be cautious about it, the small will try to be cautious. So once again, thank you, and we'll meet in a few weeks' time. If I'm right, the next one is supposed to be interaction with NIMR Foundation. Yeah. The next time, it will be, it's going to be Media Chat, but it will be with any of our researchers. We are hoping to have a session like this with NIMR Foundation. NIMR Foundation is chaired by His Excellency, Dr. Paschal. We also have His Royal Majesty, His Royal Highness, Sanusi Lamide. That's Professor Gureje. That's Professor Sarah Coleman, my sister. That's Professor Tibe. And Chief Mrs. Makosa. They are silently trying to assist NIMR in the background, helping to sensitize the public and those who are willing to part with their money to assist NIMR. And when necessary, also interact with government on our behalf. So the next session is devoted to them, so that you can meet with them, you can know them, they will tell you what they mean. Perhaps you can also help us and ask them to do more for NIMR. So that's what we'll be having next month. The exact date, I'm yet to confirm. Thank you.